Good morning, everybody. Hope you're doing well. Going to get started here soon. Ran into a little bit of technical difficulties, so just kind of setting everything up here once again, and we'll get started here in about 30 seconds. All right, happy Monday, Black Monday, Red Monday, Green Monday, whatever you want to call it. We'll jump right into the market update. This is a member-only video. It's Monday, April 7th. If anybody does have any requests as well, please let me know inside of Slack in the private community. We do have quite a few new members, so I want to shout out to the new members. We recently had DB. We've also got Sid, and I probably shouldn't have started naming names because now I'll be missing somebody, but Jam as well. I think we're the three most recent ones. So very, very much happy to have you a part of the group and welcome. And if you have any questions, it takes a little bit of getting used to, but if you have any questions, please let us know. And usually, whenever I go live, it's Tuesday and Thursdays at the moment, 30 minutes before the stock market closes. And then I'll do these sporadic live streams from time to time if something, if there's a big event or huge volatility in the market, then obviously we'll do it sort of ad hoc whenever needed. But I am looking to switch the schedule back to more frequent updates. So instead of Tuesday and Thursdays, 30 minutes before the stock market closes, I'm looking at switching back to Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Just life's been really busy with my daughter, over a year old now, so things are kind of calming down a little bit. I don't know if they'll ever really calm down, but certainly not as bad as it was whenever you're dealing with an infant. So toddler stage is pretty much here, and like I said, it's a little bit more manageable. So I'll try to go back to Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, and then the goal will be to be back to Monday to Friday, full speed again. That's what I used to do. I used to do it 30 minutes before the stock market opened and 30 minutes before the close, Monday to Friday. So ultimately, the goal will be to get back to Monday to Friday, even if we just start with the before market close videos, and then we'll go back to the pre-market as well. But just let me know inside of that thread that I posted there. All right, so jumping in, so we're seeing a recovery here, and this is why we don't trade on news or when the market starts to sell off. This is why we don't trade on news or any kind of emotions. Just give me 1 second. My dog's trying to get in his cage here. I think he's hungry. Just 1 second. Go, buddy. All right, jumping in. So yeah, this is why we don't trade on emotions and news. We don't wait for the market to sell off before we start developing a hedging plan or a plan to protect against downside. You want to be protecting against downside when we're going up, right? You want to be proactive versus reactive. And, it is what it is. It's fine if people were caught like a deer in the headlights, then it is what it is. You can learn from that. But when, the market starts crashing and we're down, almost 20% on the S&P 500, that's not really the time to start planning to mitigate risk and to protect from downside, because we're probably going to be due for some upside. And then case in point, look at SPY now. It's back up to 509. We just hit 523 after the low of the day at 481. That is insane volatility. If we just, speaking of volatility, if we bring up the VIX here, look at this thing over the last week or so, absolutely skyrocketed 259%. So volatility is your friend. But it's just as important on the way up as it is on the way down, right? You can't have the crazy bull markets without the crazy bear markets. And that's what I said yesterday in yesterday's live stream. We're in raging bull, crazy euphoric bull market on SPY since March 2020. Crazy boom and massive boom. What it usually comes after something, to the upside, usually an equivalent downside action. So if we have a major boom, very, very big boom, it's more than likely going to be a very, very big bust. And as you can see, like, it's just been melting up, and we didn't really have that many pullbacks along the way. It was really bad in 2022. We were actually down 27%, but I mentioned that that double top there at 479 was more than likely going to be very, very strong support. And I drew that line yesterday in yesterday's live stream, and look where we hit today. Right on that line. Like, you literally can't make this stuff up. I had no idea that, that was actually going to happen. That was just my own thoughts and opinions. I would have put maybe the probability at 70, 80% though. And yeah, that's why we like to have an edge, right? And like I said, we closed at the low of the week last week. It was a very weak candle close right at the low, daily candle close right at the low. So that increased the odds that we're going to see more downside into this week. And the crypto market started to catch up, and we were weak in the futures market yesterday whenever we were doing the live stream in the evening yesterday. So that increased the odds up to probably 90% whenever that happened, right? But we never know for sure. But old resistance became new support. Like I said, literally you can't make that stuff up. The low of the day was 481, and I said watch 479, and it was technically 480 because we had 479 right on the money, and then 479.98 was the double top. So we pretty much hit that right on the money. And I mentioned this yesterday, and we lost the monthly uptrend. So the fact that we lost the monthly uptrend was even more bearish, adds more momentum to the bear case. And like I said, we had that daily and weekly candle close right at the low. It wasn't looking good whatsoever. And I'm sure there was some sort of bear flag on the hourly chart here as well, or maybe even the 4 hour. Just take a quick look here. Yeah, it is. It looks like it's a bear flag here that formed. Yep. So we have our high, low, lower high, anything below 530. And it's pretty choppy here, right? Actually, yeah, it's hard to say. I wouldn't really consider that a bear flag, actually. There's just, this all happened on one day. So in my opinion, we're looking at a bottom here. And like I said, old resistance became new support, and you can't make that stuff up. That's just too perfect. I actually surprised myself there this morning whenever I saw that. But that's, sometimes I don't even think about things anymore. I just look at the chart, and it's just like instinctive at this point. It's like riding a bike, right? When you first start riding a bike, it's like, oh man, this is impossible. Never going to be able to do this. I want to quit. And then eventually you just start doing it. You're doing it without even thinking. And then eventually you're doing it no hands. And then you're not even thinking about doing it with no hands. So it's all about muscle memory, and just, practice makes perfect. I mentioned this yesterday. I've definitely put in my 10,000 hours with regards, like, I've been studying for over a decade now, right? I've been investing for about 15 years, going on 17 years, and really studying the markets for the last decade, about the last 10 or 11 years. So if you factor that in, 5 hours a day, 7 days a week is basically what I'm doing, 4 or 5 hours a day, 7 days a week for 10 years, you're at like 14 or 15,000 hours, right? And they say it takes 10,000 hours to become an expert at anything. So I've definitely put in my 10,000 hours. And when you do that, you don't even have to think about things anymore. It's just second nature, and it comes to you through muscle memory. But in terms of crypto today, we had Solo, XDC, and Songbird leading the decline on the bull list. We did have some green to flip on the day. We have Storage, EOS, and Casper. So XRP got down as low as $1.61. And I mentioned that we had the 200-day moving average there that we could potentially test at 185 it is now. And I said if we lost the monthly inside bars, that was going to be very concerning. So we had major support there at 189, the low of the monthly inside bar from last month. We lost that, and that gave us our follow through, right? We had EMA 12 there at 157, and we hit 161. So we're pretty much right on that. And we hadn't tested EMA 12 since the big breakout. So used to be resistance, 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 resistance. And then we broke out. Now we're coming back, confirming it as support, and we're looking for the monthly higher low and the trend change. So we need to change the weekly trend ASAP to be confident that the monthly higher low is set, which it's going to be at least 2 or 3 weeks before that happens. And that also coincides nicely with Paul Atkins coming into the SEC. So what we'll look for is the weekly bounce to get underway. We'll know the bounce begins when we break the high of the previous weekly candle. We'll look for that bounce to top out. We'll form a higher low. We know that the higher low is forming once we lose the low of the previous candle. And then once we break that high and form a higher low compared to this low potentially, that's when we'll be in a weekly uptrend, and we'll look for the monthly bounce to begin and new all-time highs. I would say we're about a month out, month or two. Would be very surprised if we didn't start to see new price discovery. SPCE. So I mentioned we had a monthly bear flag target and the target, and we had a daily bear flag target as well. So we were looking at 222. Today we hit 218. So again, show me the chart. I'll tell you the news. This could be one massive monthly inverse head and shoulders forming now. And I didn't pull the trigger. I was in the gym and I blinked and we were at 218 and then we're back up to 250. So my last entry was around 250. I think I'll have to double check. I think it was like 260. So I'm not going to enter yet. If we get back down, I'm pretty much happy if I never have to add again, that's fine. But if we do get back down around that 216, 220 area, I'll probably look to add. I might even wait for $2. Very, very long term hold for me and wasn't looking to break the bank on this one or anything. DDD is getting interesting for a swing trade. So I mentioned last time when it was sub $2 when we hit $1.72, I said this was pretty much a no-brainer trade, and I said anything under $2 was a great deal. We went up almost 200%. So we went from $1.72 all the way up to $5. Now we're right back down to that 172, so it's a double bottom. You could even enter with a stop, say, just under 172, so you could do like 164, 159. Essentially, you could have risked about 10%. And if we're right on nailing the bottom here and we head back to resistance, that's another 200%. So risk 10% to make 200%. That's the kind of risk to reward trades that you want, and you have a nice clear stop level to go off of. But if you want to invest for the long term, I think this company will be a solid pick long term. If we go back to the all-time highs here from the low of the day today to the all-time highs, you're looking at a 54x, so $1,000 investment into $54,000. MJ, so MJ again, all-time lows, held up better than otherwise than it otherwise would have if we were at 52-week highs or all-time highs on MJ, then based on the volatility that we saw in the market today, would be down probably 30-40% on some of these names, right? But because we've been selling off so much over the last several years and we're at all-time lows and 52-week lows, the sell-off wasn't that bad. It was only down like 5 to 10% on average, which was around the same amount that the S&P 500 was down. So pretty crazy to think. Usually the rule of thumb is when SPY's down whatever percent, multiply that by 2 or 3, and that's what MJ should be, right? MJ, crypto, all these high risk sectors, it's usually 2 or 3 times worse than that of SPY, right? And if it's really bad, and we saw tons of upside, could even be 4 times as much. So SPY's down 1, expect MJ to be down 3 or 4%. SPY's down 5%. You get the idea, right? Just times it by 3. But DB, Verano, and Oxley leading the decline today. On the bull list, AVCN, PLTH, and CXXI. See, I mentioned this holy V-shaped recovery to the Fed cut rates or what. So we had the emergency meeting with the Fed. So they might not want to wait until the next main meeting of the FOMC meeting to cut rates. So we'll see what happens there. But I said we pretty much bounced right off 479 on SPY. And then I said, this is so wild. Watcher Guru, President Trump considers 90-day pause in tariffs for all countries except China. So this is, and I mentioned this is exactly why we don't trade on news or emotions. Because imagine if you're, oh, I'm out of the market. He's doing tariffs. Oh, I'm back in. He's not doing tariffs. Oh, I'm in. Like, you drive yourself crazy, right? Like it's just, you can't be doing that, right? You can't be trading off news or events or emotions. Like, it's one thing if you're planning for the event, but if it's an unforeseen event, you need to have a plan for that, right? How do I plan for events if they didn't happen yet, or if I don't know if they're going to happen? Well, we always should expect downside because markets can do one of 3 things. They can go up, down, or sideways. We've been going up for the last several years, right? So, and we've been hitting new all-time highs. That alone should tell you to be very, very cautious. Monthly RSI is overbought. Be extra cautious, right? Start when others are greedy, be fearful. When people are fearful, be greedy, right? So start develop those plans before, right? You don't need this news to happen, right? Like, I'm pretty much going to be out of all my crypto soon. I'm going to be out of all stocks except for MJ. Not going to be selling those anytime soon. but they're like what, like 1 or 2% of my net worth, right? That whole portfolio for MJ stocks. So I don't care. I'll let it sit. But I'm all in my retirement account is all in 95% money market. I'll probably be close to 100% soon. And yeah, I'll be out of the markets and I'll be waiting for the next black swan, right? There's probably going to be some sort of cyber attack or escalation of war. There's going to be, who knows? It's going to be bad more than likely, right? And they're going to have some sort of event to blame it on, just like they're doing with this tariff, just like they did with C-19, just like they did with the financial crisis, all of this stuff, right? And it always happens at all-time highs and after a raging bull market, right? So I'm going to be out and I'm going to be waiting for the next massive dip. I don't know what's going to cause the next massive dip. I just know that there's going to be a massive dip. And if I'm wrong, I'll just wait longer, right? And yeah, there's always going to be another dip. I said tariff war ends up being even better with zero tariffs. Plot twist for the uninformed. So yeah, like European Union says it's ready to discuss zero for zero tariffs with the U.S. So all of this tariff war, imagine everybody saying, "Oh, this is the end. This is a recession. There maybe even a depression. Inflation is going to run rampant." Imagine if all of these tariffs was just a nothing burger and it was just a negotiation tactic to get other countries to drop their tariffs, and there ends up being no tariffs. Well, bidirectional, right? So what used to be tariffs on the U.S. and now tariffing other countries, it might end up being zero tariff both ways, and it's even more bullish than it was before the tariff war. So do you see where we're going with this? It's just a way to cause market panic. And if I go back, let's go back. I do this usually every couple of weeks. I start to switch. Um, let's just search for it. Money market. I do this every couple of weeks. I switch in my retirement account right here, February 14th. Just switched some more aggressive mutual funds into money market in my retirement account. I will take an all-time high opportunity. So back to 95% money market. This was February 14th. As a reminder, I do this every 2 to 4 weeks. So for the last couple of years, I've been transferring money out of my retirement account every 2 or 4 weeks, every couple of weeks or so. I will transfer money out of my aggressive funds into money market, which is effectively cash. And I'm going to be explaining this in my new course as well. That should be out in a month or two. And again, I've been doing this for almost 2 years. I really started when we were getting close to, I think maybe it was like 400 or 500 on SPY. I don't need to be greedy, right? I have a little bit in the aggressive. So like I made a ton of money from March 2020 to 2022. And then we had that big sell off. That's kind of when I started to go back in or started to go into money market. And then we had a huge recovery. And then I just started, 10% into aggressive, 90% into money market. Then eventually it got to 95. And then for the last year, I've been probably 95% money market fund, similar to Warren Buffett. Warren Buffett's sitting on record amounts of cash. Most of it's money market. And, you know, sometimes you're wrong for a year. Sometimes you're wrong for 2 years, right? But you still have a little bit exposure to the aggressive, right? And you're protecting it's called capital preservation mode. You're protecting that capital. I'm not giving back any of the gains that I've had in my retirement account in the last 5 years. I'm not giving back any, right? I'm being very, very conservative and I'm in capital preservation mode. I've got my long-term accounts, right? My crypto alts, and I've got my MJ stocks. I've got 5 real estate properties and a boatload of cash as well. But my retirement account, that's my retirement money. I'm not messing around. I am being very, very protective of that capital. I'm not giving any of it back. So yeah, I've been doing this for almost 2 years, sitting at 95% money market fund. And I mentioned this last week. Um, where was it? Did I mention it on a different channel? I might have. Yeah, I said it over in the community channel. So I said this was on Friday. I said, sure feels nice to have my retirement account in 95% money market today. My account value barely budged. I'm down about 2%. If I had everything at high risk, it'd be down 20, 30%. Today, I'd probably be down 50%. So if I was down 50% of my retirement account, that's pretty much all my gains given back for the last 5 years. Why would I do that? There's no way in hell I'm doing that, right? That's my retirement money. I've got my long-term riskier accounts, right? But there's a lot less capital and it was long-term holds And I know exactly what I'm getting myself into with crypto and MJ, right? I'm just buying and I'm setting and forgetting for 5, 10 plus years, right? So very different when you're talking about your retirement account. And again, I would say that every couple of weeks saying switching from aggressive into money market, and nobody really wanted to know anything. I don't even think I got one question on it really. Actually, maybe one from Carter, I think, and he was just curious about, and he asked me that I think not too long ago, maybe like a week or two. He said, "Is it a good time to switch back out of money market into SPY or into like aggressive funds?" And I said, "No, I'm not going to be doing it until like at least 300s on SPY before I go back in, majority into aggressive flip from net short to net long." And sure enough, a couple weeks later, market falls off a cliff, right? So if you're looking to get back into maybe 60/40, so if 60 money market, 40% aggressive, that might not have been a bad idea at 479, 481 when we were down that crucial support. But again, that's why you want to plan for this to happen before it happens. I know it sounds weird. It's like, how can I plan for something if I don't know what it is or when it's happening? It's like, well, if you study financial markets for any longer than a couple of hours, you'll always see that there'll be another crash, right? There's every huge bust is, or every huge boom is followed by a huge bust, right? And it just ebbs and flows. Nothing goes up forever and nothing goes down forever. And when in doubt, zoom out, look at the 3 month chart. We're still in a 3 month uptrend. And I think it was a 3 month bull flag as well. Let me just draw it here on SPX. Yeah, it was. So low, high, higher, low. Actually, we did pull back a little bit more than the 0.382 fib, but it was a lower wick. So we'll just consider that a bear trap. But yeah, it was saying 570. But we're still in a 3 month uptrend. Just starting 3 month consolidation the first time in 7 candles. So we had no support all the way down to 410. And then today we just hit, like I said, about 481. This is SPX, so it's a little bit, the numbers are a little bit different, and it doesn't factor in dividends. So that's why SPY is a little bit lower. This one says 483. SPY was 481 today. And this one actually says 4,835, but it's just adds a decimal there. All right. Let's see if there's any requests. SOXL. Volatility is insane, says Nick. Let's take a look here. Yeah, it's a 3x shares leveraged. Yeah. So this was a descending triangle here. So again, like when I look at this chart, I don't even have to think about it, right? Just naturally see these patterns. And you would have saw that and say, okay, that's a descending triangle. And then you go from the apex there, from the high to the low, and then move it out to where we broke out. And it was saying a measured move down to around 1471. And then with this, all this fear and everything, we've just been absolutely decimated. And you have to remember it's a 3x leverage. So that makes it even more volatile. And I'm sure we had some sort of a bear flag there. Yes, we did. We had a daily bear flag as well. So then you can just go from, and a triple top, 1, 2, 3. And then move that out to your 0.382 fib. And it was saying we were targeting about $11. And then daily oversold, weekly oversold. Hadn't been weekly oversold since all the way back in 2020. So the chances of that happening were extremely high. And we have another 4-hour bear flag as well forming. And I would assume we had a hourly bear flag as well. Yeah. And that one was saying about $9. And I'm sure if we looked at the 15-minute, there was another bear flag, probably saying somewhere around $9, which we just hit 7 on this pullback. So pretty crazy day. So XRP hit 161 and then immediately shot up to $2. Like I said, I mentioned as well multiple times that and Ben was talking about it in the Power Group private community. He's really been having a good eye lately, keen eye, and calling things out. I see lots of people and in the group are really starting to learn how to identify these patterns and stuff. So it's I love to see it because that just means that you're learning, and I'm doing a good job as the teacher. So the best the best feeling as somebody who teaches, kind of, I'm not a financial advisor, but I like to teach people how to manage their own money and technical analysis, charting. The best feeling in the world is when you're teaching people something and then they start to really grasp it and start to post things about it, because then you know that your work is being valued, and what you're doing is making a difference. So love to see that. But yeah, I mentioned if we lose 189, the monthly inside bar, two in a row, that's even more bearish because they're tightening range. And the more it's like a coiled spring, right? If you coil it up, it shoots harder. So the fact that we were that coiled for multiple months, once we lost 189, I said we could easily see 150. And then sure enough, 161 today. And we have the EMA 12 there on the monthly at 157. So I would expect the bottom to be in very, very soon. I can't see us going much lower than 150. And this was all manipulated, orchestrated, sell off. So, and it's orchestrated when the market's tanking and Trump comes out and says, looking to do a 90-day pause. This is what he did all the time in his last presidency. He was trying to trade war, every second word out of his mouth. China, trade war, right? And the stock market would be crashing in like 2021, 2022. And he'd come out, or sorry, 2016. So it was 2016 to 2020. So like in 2017, 2018, he'd come out and be like, oh, the stock market would be crashing. And he'd come out and say, making real good progress with China. And then the stock market would recover, and it would be like right on critical support too, right? And the same thing today. Like, it's literally clockwork. You can't make this stuff up. Literally today, right on key monthly resistance, which was 479 double top, which I mentioned would more than likely become new support. Look at that. Perfect. Drew it yesterday. He came out right as we were hitting 481 on that crucial support and said, looking to do a pause. You think this is all coincidence? Absolutely not. This is not coincidence. Everything is rigged, and it's rigged from the top down. And it's rigged against the little guy and gal, right? Us, because we're at the bottom. All right, not seeing any other requests. I did have a request though from Anil, a new member as well. Shout out to Anil. Um, Let me just take a quick look at that. So, going to go over this now in the live stream. I was going to do a video on this, but I'll do it now. I'm just going to let him know. Him, her, I'm not sure. To him or her. Nil, maybe you can let me know. So yeah, members only, market update, ticker request, just sent that to you. And we'll jump into, I'm just looking at your question here now. He sent me a private message. Wondered if you could look at Grown Rogue. So grin on CSE, based on my extremely rudimentary knowledge of charting, placed an order at 41 cents, just above a gap, and another buy at 36 where it seems 36 cents where it seems to be support. Cheers. Okay, yeah, we can take a look at that. So 41 and 36. Yeah, so we hit 45.5, so that's not a bad place to be at. Yeah, we've seen a huge run up in the stock, but we have no support now on the monthly all the way down to 12 cents. So if we take our fib tool here and we go from swing low to swing high, we're currently testing the golden pocket. So anything in this range here typically is a solid buy zone. So I like your levels. I maybe would have adjusted it to 47 cents. It all depends, right? I don't know if you own a position, if this is your first buy ever, what your goal is. Yeah, I don't know how much money you have invested in MJ. Do you have any money, zero money, tons of money? All these things would factor in. Do you own other MJ stocks? But yeah, if you're looking at Grown Rogue, somewhere in this region would be solid. So you could do, yeah, somewhere around 47 cents. You could do 41 cents, like you mentioned, which would basically be right in the middle. 37 cents is like pretty much the median line there. And then 30 cents at the 0.786. And then old resistance here at 35 cents. So that could become new support, similar to what just happened on SPY. And we were monthly overbought, and we're potentially heading to monthly oversold now. So I think your targets are pretty decent. I think we had a bear flag here on the daily time frame. We had a lot of bear flags on a lot of names. And yes, it was. So if we go from the high to the low there, it didn't get above the 0.32 fib, so it maintained the bear flag. And we were targeting a move down to 57 cents, and we just hit 45 based on this exaggerated sell-off from the broader market. So something that you can't really predict. That's why, yeah, you want to scatter your buys, but I would say you're pretty much bang on there. You're doing really well with your entry targets. And then having it scattered definitely helps. Not a whole lot of volume here on the shorter level time frames, but there is a descending triangle here on the hourly. And then you would just take your measured move there from the high to the low, move it out to where we busted out of there. And it's saying measured moves down to around 43 cents. So yeah. And you have to remember, you have to think about it too. If your buy order's at 41 and we're at 48 and you don't own any, and you really want to get exposure to it, maybe you just pull the trigger and add a little bit now. If we go from 48 cents down to 41 cents, that's only 15% cheaper. But if let's say if this were a bottom, we head up to monthly resistance, that's 138%. So risk 10-15% to make 100 and some percent. Not a bad risk to reward trade, but again, it all depends what your goal is. We're weekly overbought, so not a bad idea to enter here just after weekly oversold. We are overbought, so again, if you just know nothing about anything about just RSI, that'll tell you right here that this was a bad time to be in it, and more than likely take profit or wait for better entries, etc. And then sure enough, we went from weekly overbought to oversold, daily oversold, and close to monthly. Grin.ca. Let's take a look over here as well. Yeah, so we lost the 10-week moving average. We had a stochastic and a MACD bear cross, so we had all the heads up in the world that we were more than likely going to see more downside. And like I said, we were weekly overbought, barely any monthly support, and we do have the 200-day moving average there at 39 cents, which is approaching. So, like I said, your entries are pretty decent. And we just had a death cross with the 50 and the 200-day moving average crossing. When the shorter term, the 50 is above the 200-day, that's a death cross, massive downside. All right, I think that's it. Not seeing any other requests at the moment. I do have some threads to get caught up on. Yeah, well, I'll try to get caught up in those right after this. All right, yeah, keep your head up, chin up, maintain a level head, and we'll talk to all the members in the private community here in a few minutes. I'll probably make this video live as well for YouTube members. I do these videos, live streams, and requests for the POW Group private members. That's a different membership than the YouTube membership. If you go to powgroup.ca or pursuitofwealthgroup.com, that's where you can sign up for the gold, silver, or VIP POW Group membership, private group, and that gives you access to the Slack community that I was showing earlier. And that's where we have almost 50 members. I'm in there all day, every day, 24/7, 365. You can ask ticket requests. You can join these live streams, ask requests here, and join a community of about 50 members where we bounce, buy and sell ideas off of each other before we jump into any trades, and we learn from each other. And yeah, the more eyes on the market, the better. But if you want to be a YouTube member, there's different memberships on there as well, and you can view these videos after they go live. I'll upload them usually after the fact. Maybe I'll change the name of the YouTube membership as well. The YouTube membership being called VIP, and then a VIP option on the POW group private community, I guess, is probably a little confusing. So maybe I'll look to change that here after this live stream. But all right, we'll talk to everybody in the chat room in a few minutes.